Good evening and welcome to Faith Connections. I'm your host, Prophetess Shonda Smith-Lyons. And as always, I am here with my wonderful studio audience. Listen, I want to talk to not only married couples, but people that are desiring to be married, couples that aren't married, just everybody that desires to have a relationship. I have an awesome guest in the studio on tonight, and I'm going to give her an opportunity to introduce herself to you.
Hello, I'm Naomi J, and I'm a relationship expert out of Houston, Texas. I got into relationship expert by way of HR management. I spent about 25 years in HR management, and as the company was going through change, I started noticing that we were having some disruptions in the workplace. And when we peeled back the onions, we found out that a lot of it had to do with relationships. So as a result, when my position was eliminated, the likely thing for me to do was to go into the relationship arena. So I've been doing it for about the past 5 years, and I've been so happy and so blessed to have saved marriages, to have prevented marriages in some cases, because not every relationship is the relationship that you should go into for a lifetime. So I just want to spend some time just talking about relationships, how God has put us together to be man and wife, to come together for a purpose, and just really discuss relationships, the difficulties, the good times, the bad times, the whole gamut. So tonight, let's just talk relationships.
Yes. And again, Ms. Hardy, it's so good to have you here on tonight. And I know that you came all the way from
H-Town, Houston, Texas. Came from Houston, Texas. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And before we actually get started with talking about relationships and so forth, I just want to give you an opportunity just to promote your gift and what you have going on in the near future. Do you have any upcoming events? I know that you're more than just a relationship expert. You're also an empowerment speaker. And so what are some things that you have going on?
Well, one of the things, I am a member, a devoted member to a Berean Missionary Baptist Church. And that's where I serve under the pastorship of Bruce Washington, our pastor. And one of the things that he's allowed to happen is that we're going to have a morning couples retreat. And that will be on August the 12th, and we're calling it a Morning of Love. And it's where we're going to bring couples together and just give them 3 to 4 hours to really just redefine their relationship, recommit to their relationship. And it's like going on a morning date. So for a lot of couples, when is the last time that you got up and went on a morning date, that you were showered with love, that you were reminded of what you have with each other? So that will be taking place at Berean Missionary Baptist Church, located in Houston, Texas, on Cullen Boulevard. Another thing that we have going on is I have a workshop coming up on August the 24th, and that is giving your relationship a purpose. A lot of times we just get into a relationship not understanding that the relationship is so much bigger than us. And so we're going to really dive down and talk about those things that you should have, what I call in your toolkit, in your relationship toolkit, because God put us together for more than just to love each other. And a lot of times when we have a different foundation, we can move in a different way. When those little storms come, we have something solid to stand on. Other than just, I love you, you don't love me. That's good and that's great, but there's just so much more. So giving your love a purpose.
Amen. Amen. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing that I wanted to ask you regarding relationships and so forth, because I hear that normally the biggest, most important thing in your relationship is communication. What would you say to that?
I would say yes. I talk about trust, love, and communication. Okay. And so many times a couple will say, you got to trust me, you got to trust me, or you got to love me, you got to love me. And that's all well and fine, but if you can't communicate that, I can love you all day long, but if I can't communicate it to you and communicate it to you in a way that you understand it, you'll take my love and think it's light. It may be the best that I have to give, and it's my love. but I can't communicate it to you, so you take it as something else. Okay. And the same thing with the trust. I want to trust you, but if I can't communicate it to you, then it's like it's just on the wall, just waiting. Mm-hmm. So communication, by far, is the most important when it comes to the three: the trust, the love, and the communication. Okay. If I can communicate, if we can communicate together, if you can hear what I'm saying and understand what I'm saying, if I can hear what you're saying and understand what you're saying, we have a better chance.
Okay. Now, how would you communicate? Because I know that our ways of communication and our ways of understanding, a lot of times as men and women, is very much different. I believe that for women, we are more verbal with our communication, whereas men, they're probably more, I don't even know, because it just kind of varies from man to man. But what have you found in your expertise?
What I found with my couples is that we're put in these silos. Mm-hmm. So we're told that women are more verbal mm-hmm. and men are less verbal. Mm-hmm. But I'm here to tell you, I sat around a domino table with men for over 12 years, playing dominoes, being the only woman at the table. And when I tell you those men can talk, when I tell you they communicate, they have feelings, but they have just been told that's not how you be a man. So when they get together, oh my goodness. And what I learned was the minute I said something, I shut the conversation down. So I learned how to be at the domino table, not say a word, and take it all in. Mm-hmm. So men want to communicate, but we're women of a different age. And when I say women of a different age, I can raise my hand on it sometime. We know everything. Mm-hmm. And we let you know that we know everything. Well, if every time he says something, you say, I know that. I got that. I could have told you that. But what does it really leave them to talk about? Mm-hmm. So communication gets kind of swept under the rug. And then they end up really just talking among the guys. So we have to get to the point. We talk about submission. We talk about submitting as a word in the Bible. We have to learn to do that. Mm-hmm. We have to learn to really get to the point where we can submit so that we can hear their voice. We're so busy wanting our rights and wanting to be able to be heard that we're drowning out our men. Mm-hmm. So let them communicate. It may take a minute. It may take them a little longer. They go through an analytical process, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But learn how to just sit back and let them talk. And I find it hard to do sometimes myself. It's not the easiest thing to do. Okay. But yes, they can be verbal, but we as a society have kind of silenced them to where now when it comes out, it's a blurt or it comes out harsh because they want to get it out and they don't want to get stopped. So just submit a little and listen. I bet your man has a lot to say.
Okay. Now, in your experience, when you did that, when you were with these men and you just kind of let them talk and you listen, how were you able to communicate what it was that you wanted to say?
I was actually in listening mode because I was shocked by some of the stuff that I heard because they were able to let their hair down among each other. So I learned a lot about men. I learned a lot about how they really feel about relationships. I learned a lot about, the good and the bad. I learned a lot about why they cheat. I learned a lot about why they leave. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was an intake. It was a big intake. Okay. Now, in terms of relationship, what happens is I have to hold my tongue a lot because I do have that innate of wanting to just spill it out, of wanting to say, I know it. But I have to sit back and I have to listen. And sometimes it takes my husband a while to get the words out. But I have to be okay with that. I'm not the best at it. I'm always working on it. But our communication is getting a lot better as a result of it.
Now, you said that you said something that I just want to kind of go back to because you said you found out with listening why men cheat, why they leave. What was like the main thing that you found in those areas as to why men cheat, or even and let's just not make this about men, but if in your experience have you found out why women may cheat? Because men aren't the only cheaters, right?
Men aren't the only cheaters, but there's this innate thing that we both need. We both need what I'm about to talk about, but the level that one needs one and one needs the other. It's love and respect.
Okay.
Men need respect, and they need to be respected at a higher level than we. I mean, they can live without love, but they can't live without respect. So oftentimes, the man feels disrespected. And that can go back to a communication issue, or that could really be, you know what, I don't respect you. But a man needs to feel respected. And when a man does not feel respected, and then, along comes Sally, who will give respect, then you have the ear. And before you know it, things happen that you really don't intend to happen. But a man's innate need for respect and not getting it will lead him to do things, or can lead him to do things. And likewise with a woman, the need to be loved, the need to be appreciated, the need to be doted on to whatever extent that is. When she doesn't receive that, then the eyes tend to start wondering, because someone may come whisper in the ear the very thing that she wants to hear from her man. Okay. So that's what I found just in dealing with my couples. Okay. It's and it's always that boyfriend that you forgot how terrible he was, but all of a sudden he seems great because all you're remembering is the good stuff because something's going wrong in your current relationship. Okay.
Okay. And I know that you've probably helped hundreds of people. When you weren't able to get the desired result, perhaps that the couple wanted, and maybe stand together, what did you find as the main reasons being?
Not willing to compromise, not willing to do the work, because it takes work. And a lot falls on the woman. And the woman will say, why do I have to do everything? And it's because we have this power that we don't use. We have this power that just transcends. And so I call it just really standing in your power to affect your relationship. And when you do that, then all of a sudden you do the work up front. And then you don't have to do it in the end. But when you don't want to do it up front, then again, it goes back to the communication. I start having my opinion of what that means. You start having your opinion of what that means. And all of a sudden we're going down different paths. So that's just a big problem. And you just really have to decide, okay, am I willing to go through the relationship like this? And you'd be surprised how many people are. They're willing to just sit back and just go through the relationship, being unhappy, fighting at every turn, slamming doors, crying in the middle of the night, when it doesn't have to be that way.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I heard you say that a lot of the responsibility falls on the woman.
Yes.
Okay, so is that because men just don't want to step up and do what's required of them? Because let's just be real, all of the responsibility should not fall on the woman.
And I agree, not all of the responsibility, but a big part. We have this persuasion that we don't use. They're the one that brings it. We're the one that carries it. Okay, and that's the way I look at it. They bring it, we carry it. We have the emotional side. We have the more persuasive side. They have the more demanding side. Now, that's the norm. There are cases where one is to extreme on one end and one is extreme on the other end. Okay. We keep looking for that man that is supposed to care for the wife as he cares for the church. But so many of our men are not in the church, so they don't understand what that means. And so many of our women are, so they understand and they will know what that means. Yeah. And so that's some of the power. Okay. That's some of the power.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, but I want to pick up right there when we come back. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this.
Trials and Tribulations, Silhouettes of a Woman's Story by Spirited Soul Productions, written and directed by Shonda D. Smith-Lyons.
Really deal with it, the only way is by trusting God.
Oh my goodness!
For both of you. And the next time I catch you two talking to each other like this, I'm going to do more than talk. I'm
drama, and passion for God.
He just called me the hippopotamus boy, right? You all know me.
No. You want to know if you can get a Mercedes or you can say, no.
There you go. Well, preacher girl, if you don't change your ways, you go but hell. Why you sitting there judging me? Some of them same folks up in your church on them same usher board behind the pulpit going to hell.
You can be carried out.
Get your copy today.
Welcome back to Faith Connections. I'm your host, Prophetess Shonda Smith-Lyons. And again, I am here with my special guest, Miss Naomi Hardy, and we are talking about relationships. Now, before the break, we were just discussing communication. Now, I had some questions that I received from people, and I wanted to just get your advice since you are our relationship expert for the day. One of the questions, and this ties into communication, which is what we were talking about before the break, how do you communicate with a person who always has an answer to everything? Or how do you become your own person without drowning out your identity?
Well, communicating with someone who always has the answer is very difficult because that person has an innate need to be heard regardless. So the first thing you do is just acknowledge that they're being heard, and then you have to submit. Now, you may not like this, but that's what you have to do. You have to submit. So can I ask something right now? So can I say something right now? And that opens up the door. Once they say yes, then it opens up the door for you to go and say what you need to say.
Okay.
And in terms of losing yourself, it's not losing yourself. Don't think of it as losing yourself. Think of it as, what is it that I need to do in order to be able to get my point across?
Okay.
Because that person needs to be heard.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, the innate ability you talked about of wanting or needing to be heard, is that something that goes back to perhaps that person's childhood or their underlying issues?
It most definitely almost always goes back to childhood, or maybe in the workplace, they're not being heard. So many times I've heard people say in the workplace, you know, I say something and no one hears me. I say something and no one hears me. So when someone that I care about, when someone that I love treats me the same way, you're triggering. Those are just triggers. So we have to learn how to handle the triggers that our partners may have.
Okay. Makes sense. This is a really good one. If you are married or you remarried, can you be friends with your ex-husband or ex-wife?
So
Why or why not?
My first question is, can you? Can you really be friends with them and just friends? And the second is why? They're ex. Why do you need to still be friends with them? Because you didn't say because of the kids. So you've remarried. Why is it necessary? I think that's the question you need to ask. They've gone on to another life. You've gone on to another life. You don't have to hate each other, but why do you need to be friends? Were you friends when you were married? Why do you need to be friends now?
Okay. All right. Another question I have is, how do you deal with individuals' relationships that refuse to grow individually, spiritually, just in life general?
If you have to have that person in your life, if you must have that person in your life, then the way you deal with it is through prayer. You have to pray because you can't change the person. You can pray for the strength to deal with the person. You can pray that one day that person will see the light. But what does see the light really mean? Does it mean see the light and become what you want them to become? And is that in itself selfish? So all you can do is pray to be able, if you really need that person in your life, pray. And pray hard. Pray hard, pray without ceasing. Pray for the strength, pray for the understanding, pray for the ability to keep on with the person, if that's what you really want. And then, sometimes you have to pray for freedom. Pray to be released from whatever it is that's drawing you to that person, if they don't have to be in your life.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna interject here because I'm gonna put on my therapist hat, because by trade I am. Because I looked at this question, and is it safe to say that when we talk about dealing with individuals that refuse to grow individually, spiritually, just in life, period, how do you properly measure that? Because if you're saying, hey, this person isn't growing spiritually, this person isn't growing physically, individually, how can you properly measure that to say that they are or aren't growing? Because all of us are at different stages, and our processes in life are very much differently. Is it possible that we're putting an unrealistic expectation on that person because we want them to be somewhere in life or at a certain stage in life that perhaps they're just in the process of getting to?
Very much so. Very much so. It's possible that we can want them to be in a place that they're growing into. We want them there, and we want them there right now. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, why prayer is so important. Because, again, you can't change the person. Mm-hmm. You have to change the way that you feel. You have to change your approach. You have to change what you're willing to withstand and put up with. Someone's little growth may be huge compared to what you think is a phenomenal growth for you. So prayer, I just always send people back to prayer because it opens up your mind to what you're really looking at, what's really the problem. And I don't hate to say it, but sometimes what you're seeing and what you're hating is that thing in you that you're trying to get rid of.
Yes.
So.
Yes. All right, so I have a question here. When trust has been tested, can it be rebuilt? What are some of the ways?
Well, trust is oftentimes tested. And when it fails, it can be a very disheartening thing. And it can be rebuilt, but it takes a lot of effort. It's that saying, I can do 10 great things, but the one bad thing that I do will carry with me forever. And that's the same way with trust. If you're willing to make the journey, everything is about the journey. If you're willing to make the journey, if you're willing to go through the scars, if you're willing to go through the fire to get to the other side, and if you're willing to take the risk, because there's no guarantee that the trust won't be broken again. So are you willing to take the risk and trust again, knowing what happened the first time? A lot of times people aren't, and so they run. Other times people do, and it touches the person so much that they spend the rest of their life trying to make sure that trust is never broken again. You have to assess who you're with. Who am I really with? What kind of person? Is this a one-off, or is this just who they are? And if they are, we have some trust breakers out there. And if that's what they are, you're going to have to accept it for that and know that you will. You can rebuild it all you want to. It'll get broken time and time again until, again, that person tries to change.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. If you have a friend that gets angry about everything, what is the best thing to do? Should you talk to that person about it or not?
If you have a friend that gets angry about everything, that's their MO. That's how they handle things. You can talk to them about it, but I'm not sure what you're going to resolve. Because if a person gets angry all the time, again, we talked about the underlying issues. There's some underlying issues. Maybe they've been hurt a lot during life. Maybe someone has just broken their trust. And maybe they just don't like themselves. People that get angry a lot really don't like themselves. And there's really nothing you can do about that. You can tell them how wonderful they are. But until they believe it, until they take it in, they're going to get angry. And they may subside for a minute. They may subside for a short period of time. But that is them. And so they're going to eventually erupt again.
Makes sense. And then this will be the last question. How can you be with someone that is not as saved as you are.
So that goes back to the equally yoked. And so often that is the case because we talked about it earlier. You know, a lot of the women are in the church and a lot of the men aren't. So you are, you know, put in that situation a lot of times where one partner is not saved and the other is. And you know, when you go back to Scripture, it just basically says you have to pray. You have to pray for and over that person. You have to continue as you are. You have to be that light. You have to allow what you're doing to somehow manifest in them and hope and pray that they will say, "Ooh, I want to be like that. Ooh, I want some of that." So the harder you try, you're developing yourself, but maybe you're putting a longing into them. And that's about the best you can do because that is up to them, their relationship with God. So you turn it over to God and you just pray that they will be able to move in that direction. It only takes one touch, just one touch from that mighty man.
My God.
That's all
Yes.
it takes. And it can turn that thing around.
Amen. Amen. Well, we are almost out of time. I do want to give you an opportunity just to speak to our live viewers, the people that are watching, just whatever you feel that God is placing on your heart regarding relationship. And then our next segment, we're going to have a little fun with some couples that we have here on today. So you can go ahead and speak.
Well, one thing that I just want to tell the audience, and I want to let people know, is love requires bravery. Relationship requires bravery. And the bravest thing that you can do is get the courage to be with the one that you want to be with. Relationships, any relationship, is going to have difficulties. But the most rewarding thing is to be in a relationship with the person that you want to be with.
Amen. Amen. Well, you heard it. You heard it from our relationship expert, Miss Naomi Hardy, all the way from Houston, Texas. We are out of time, but definitely out of word. Miss Hardy, I would love to have you back. I know you're coming back for our next show, but beyond that, I would love to have you back again. I've learned so much, and I appreciate you coming and just sharing with us what God has given you. And to all of you that are watching, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, God bless you, and good night.